Hi, I'm Charlie Albone and welcome to episode 2 of That's How We Grow, in partnership with STIHL Garden Power Tools. If your lawn is looking a little lackluster after winter, you're certainly not alone. Cooler weather, increased rainfall, reduced hours of sunlight, and regular morning frosts aren't exactly the perfect conditions for a nice lush lawn. But don't fret, there are plenty of things you can do to breathe some life back into it. But if you feel your lawn is beyond repair, we'll also take you through how to lay a brand new lawn and what are the key steps for success. Either way, I'll be sharing everything you need to know to spring your lawn back into shape. Now we are talking to lawn royalty, Joe Rodgers. I've been buying lawn from Joe for years now. He's a top bloke and he knows everything there is about grass. He's the type of guy who watches rugby league just to look at the pitch. Without further ado, let's talk to Joe. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. You've got a pretty good pedigree when it comes to turf. You were brought up on a turf farm, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Charlie. Thanks for having me. My father started growing grass in Berry on the south coast of New South Wales in the late 1980s. So I was born early 90s, so I've been sort of on a farm ever since, grown up, school holidays, that sort of thing. And ever since I was born. So.
And you got straight into the family business when you left school. So, I mean, you're the man when it comes to grass.
Yeah.
I won't tell your dad that.
Yeah. Don't say that too loudly. He'll be normally sneaking around somewhere. But no, ever since I left school, it was, easy enough to get a job, I suppose, when your dad's the boss. But yeah, straight out of there and actually worked on a turf farm for 4 or 5 years, cutting grass, delivering grass, growing grass. And since then I've been working for Lawn Solutions Australia.
Yeah, so you've done the whole lot. You know how it all works. There's an old saying in gardening that, you pick the right plant for the right spot and it's going to succeed. Is that the same with turf? Is it the different varieties are for different requirements?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure this is similar to plants. I'm not a big expert in plants, but there are certain varieties that handle shade better, that handle wear and tear better, that use less water, that should be used in certain situations. So a lot of the time turf fails is it's simply the wrong varieties put in the wrong spot. So like anything, we've got shade tolerant varieties, we've got wear tolerant varieties, and we've got varieties that use less water. So if you don't have that good access to irrigation or you're in a rural area, there's certain varieties that suit certain applications a lot better.
What is the best grass for shade? Because that's the one question I get asked the most. You're under a tree, it's quite a shady spot. Can you use grass or is it better to maybe go for a ground cover or something like that?
No, you can use grass. Grass has its limits, but it's a really common question now with the modern day housing estate, I guess you'd call them, small blocks, big houses, lots of shade. So there are shade tolerant varieties. The most shade tolerant you'll get is a soft leaf buffalo, like Sir Walter, DNA certified, is Australia's most popular variety. And the reason it is so popular is because of its shade tolerance. So you can get away with Sir Walter in as little as sort of 2 to 3 hours of sunlight a day. You'll need a little bit more than that if you're getting regular wear and tear on it. But as a rule of thumb, if you put Sir Walter DNA certified buffalo in 2 to 3 hours of sunlight or low light areas, it'll generally succeed and do pretty well.
Is there ever a time when you suggest, and I'm glad that I'm on the other side of a screen when I say this, artificial turf?
That's a swear word around here, Charlie. So just really watch yourself there. But
I'm with you on that. I can't stand the stuff. I've got a friend who has it and he loves it, and I think it's the most repulsive stuff I've ever seen.
No, it's look. Like everything, it does have its place. If you've got a situation where you want something green and nothing else will work, it's in full shade, then yeah, maybe you might consider putting it in. I think other things look better. But the problem with it is people generally rip it out after they put it in because they don't like it, and it often ends up in landfill and it doesn't decompose and it's just ugly rubber.
The only time I found it good is if you've got 2 Alsatians and no sunlight. Then it works well.
Heavy wear and tear and no sunlight at all is about the only time you'd put it in.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that one. When it comes to maintaining grass, what is sort of the optimum? What is the optimum schedule for looking after grass? I know a lot of people. I don't know if you'd call them lazy gardeners as such, but they kind of let the grass get too long, and then they think, I don't want to do this very often. I'm going to cut it as low as I possibly can, and I know that's terrible for grass, right? So what is and the reason for that is it scalps it. It exposes all the bits that shouldn't be exposed to the sun. It's really, really, really bad for it. What is the optimum sort of schedule for grass?
Sure. Well, it is slightly dependent on your variety and where you are, but as a general rule of thumb, you should be fertilising 3 to 4 times a year, and that's really important. Fertilising obviously gives the grass its nutrients it needs to grow. So if you fertilise, as a rule of thumb, if people want to sort of keep this in the back of their minds, grass goes into dormancy over winter, like certain plants do. It slows down growing. It usually wakes up about early September, about springtime, and later in September, early October if you're in the cooler climates. You should fertilise as soon as you notice your grass is growing again. So as soon as you notice it wakes up from spring, it starts to green up, starts to grow, fertilise it then. And then again around Christmas time, just to keep it going through the really hot months of the year. And then I say Easter time, Anzac Day, sometime that day, that time of year prior to winter, are 3 crucial times of the year to fertilise. Regular mowing is really good for grass. It's really good for the health of the grass. It helps to tighten it up, strengthen it a lot. And if you're regularly cutting the top of the lawn off, it's encouraging it to grow sideways. And what that does is that makes it a lot denser, thicker, and stronger. And it's actually a natural weed barrier. It really develops a natural weed barrier. That's why golf courses and sports fields always look so good. They look so dense, so tight, so short. It's because they're mowing regularly. And I'm not telling people to get out there and mow every day because I know it's a chore to some people. It's a hobby to some others. But over the growing months, once a week, something like that, if you get the mower out on a Sunday morning and push it around, you're doing a lot of good things for your grass by mowing regularly.
Yeah, so you're not suggesting every day, or are you suggesting every day if you can?
I'm not suggesting every day. If you're that way inclined, absolutely. No, those people with there's a lot of people out there now with cylinder mowers, the real mowers that golf courses and that use, and they want their lawn cut at 10, 12, 14 millimetres, really low. If you're doing that 2 to 3 times a week is how much you're going to have to mow. Yes. And you would be shocked to know how many people around Australia do that now. It really, really is a growing trend, and it's awesome to see. But for your average punter with a STIHL battery mower, whatever it is you want to be mowing about once a week to keep a good lawn healthy over the warm.
Do you need to do your edges once a week as well?
Probably not as prominently as you have to mow your lawn. You could probably keep your edges to every second mow. Again, personal preferences. It depends how you want it to look. If you want beautiful, straight, perfect edges, then do them once or every time you mow. Generally do them before you mow too. Yep. It's a lot neater and cleaner. But once every 2 to 3 mows is fine as well. It's not going to look too bad.
I remember I was at the Chelsea Flower Show in 2015, and it was sort of the mad rush before judging occurred, and it was pouring with rain, and I looked across the garden and we had a sunken lawn, and I saw my mum on her hands and knees cutting the edges of the grass with some scissors. That's how much my mum loves me.
I don't know if my mum would do that for me. Actually, you got a good mother there.
Yeah, I've got a really good mum for that.
But actually, it's funny you say that. There's a group of lawn fanatics in Australia that do something very, very similar to that. It's a hands and knees, scissor type business, getting things perfect. So she's not alone there.
Yeah, in Europe, people they do that. They cut their edges by shears. In Australia, it tends to be more of a battery powered sort of whippersnipper type trimmer edge that people go for.
Each to their own.
Yeah, each to their own, exactly. So that's kind of the regular maintenance, mowing once a week, doing the edges whenever, fertilizing 3 times a year. When it comes to scarifying, aerating, top dressing and all that stuff, is that a yearly process? Is it a seasonal process? How do you like to see it done?
So I'd sort of class that as secondary lawn maintenance. So the stuff I mentioned before, which is fertilising, mowing, and also watering too. And watering's important in times of drought. I usually say with watering, just quickly, if it hasn't rained for 2 or 3 weeks and your grass is starting to wilt, starting to lose colour, just give it a quick drink. And just remember when you're watering your grass, less frequent, deeper waterings are more effective than giving it a light splash here and there. So just keep that in the back of your mind.
It helps to draw the roots deeper into the soil, doesn't it? So it becomes more drought tolerant, yeah.
Yep, you want to soak your lawn, get them roots down nice and deep. So when you do get another dry period, deeper roots mean it can access deeper water sources. So you're drought-proofing the lawn essentially. So when it comes to scarifying, aerating, top dressing, what you just mentioned, again, does depend on the situation and what you're after. But as a rule of thumb, you should be aerating seasonally. I think the start of spring is a great time to aerate, and aerate just before you fertilise will help them nutrients get down deeper into the soil. So what aerating is trying to do, it's sort of in the name, it's trying to let air into the soil base. And what can happen over a period of time, say a year, 2 years, to a lawn that has regular traffic, is the soil can become really, really compacted. It can also almost be like concrete in a lot of situations. It gets that hard. So you just think for a young plant or a small plant like turf grass trying to put roots down, it's easier to try to put it down into nice fluffy soil than it is to concrete. So poking holes in the soil and aerating or coring once a season is super important. Now, scarifying is a funny one. More people are scarifying their lawns than ever now because more people are trying to achieve that bowling green look. If you've got a cooch or a kikuyu lawn, you can scarify as regularly as you pretty much want to. Once a year is a really good idea. And when you're scarifying cooch or kikuyu, you can go right down to the dirt, essentially. Cooch and kikuyu have things called rhizomes, which essentially are runners that grow under the ground. That's why they pop up in your garden and that sort of thing sometimes. But if you cut them right down to the dirt, it sort of really rejuvenates young growth and gets the lawn back super healthy. If you've got a Sir Walter buffalo lawn or any type of buffalo lawn, don't go as low when you're scarifying or dethatching because buffalo lawns don't have that strong underground rhizome. It's important to leave a little bit of matter on the surface when you're doing that.
Okay, and would you top dress after you've aerated with sand to fill in those gaps?
Great idea. Yeah, top dressing is a really, really good thing to do for lawn maintenance. And a couple of reasons. If you haven't quite got your preparation right, you haven't got the soil base you really want, using a top dress or top dressing regularly is a great way to incorporate a nice sandy soil into what could be a pretty clay heavy profile or something like that. And doing it after top dressing or coring just makes it easy for that sand to get down a little bit deeper and improve the overall soil profile. So top dressing is a really, really important thing to do seasonally, I'd reckon too.
I guess you could fill in any small divots and things like that as well and start to get that really flat lawn if you wanted to by doing it then as well. Yeah.
Fixing it up with top dressing down the track is an easy enough thing to do, and you'll get the result you're after a lot more effectively by doing it that way.
The key to a good lawn is the preparation. So how do you achieve that?
Okay, there's a couple of key steps to the process. The first one, whether it's a bit of building rubble from a building site or an existing lawn, is to spray a herbicide or a weed killer on whatever's there, because if you don't, chances are whatever's growing there at the moment will pop back up through your new lawn, which is one thing you don't want. So first things first, spray the weeds dead. Generally, 2 applications of a herbicide 10 to 14 days apart is a good idea, not just the one, because you'll get a better kill on what's there and less chance of them popping up in the future. After you kill them, it's all about getting that base nice and soft and fluffy so it can drain and turf can put roots down nice and easily. So decompacting the soil is super important. And if you've got to import soil to get your levels up to where they need to be, a nice sandy soil is best for turf. Nothing too heavy or too overly organic. Sandy loam or 80-20 mix or something like that is ideal for turf grass.
Okay, so I've seen, when people are laying grass, they decompact it. That gets the air back in it. That gives it a bit of fluffiness and a bit of life. And then you see mainly landscapers or people laying turf, I guess, doing that sort of silly dance as they shuffle across the grass, recompacting it. That sort of goes against what you're saying. Is that not the right thing to do?
Yeah, look, it's a tricky one to find the balance. So you're spot on. You shouldn't be overly compacting soil that you've just laid in preparation for turf, because it sort of contradicts the whole idea of decompacting and getting it nice and fluffy. But a little rule of thumb for people that are looking to lay some turf is, when it comes to how compacted you should have the soil, is you should be able to walk over it and see where your footprints are, but they shouldn't be leaving an indent in the soil, so that you should see the marks of the boots or the shoes, but no indent, and then you know your soil's just the right amount of compaction for you to start laying turf.
Okay, and removing stones as well, that's an important thing to do. I guess it's the princess and the pea, isn't it? The stone will come up through the grass, you'll feel it when you're laying on it, that sort of stuff.
Yep. Removing stones, rocks, pebbles, tiles, any builder's rubbish or materials that are still left in the soil is really, really important for a couple of reasons. One of them is stones and rubble that's underneath the surface can heat up quite quickly, can cause grass to dry out in certain areas. The other is grass finds it pretty hard putting roots down through stones and rocks and that sort of thing. So you can end up with a dead patch about the size of whatever it is underneath the surface. And just one last thing with that, it can be a bit of a safety hazard. If you've got kids and that sort of thing running around, tackling each other on the grass, the last thing you want is a semi-buried stone sitting right where you don't want it.
I have 2 young boys that do a lot of that, chasing each other around, tackling each other on the grass at the moment, so I know all about that pain.
Yeah. Yep.
So when you got the soil right, so you've decompacted it, is it good to add in any sort of compost or anything like that, or is that too organic, it breaks down too quickly and then you get lumps?
No, look, a certain amount of compost or manure or something like that can be good. You just got to keep in mind that turf loves free draining soils. So as long as it's not clogging up the soil's ability to drain and absorb water, then it's fine. A lot of people use dynamic lifter and manures and that sort of thing to try and boost the organic component of the soil, the content, which is fine. But you just don't want to go too over the top. It's not like garden mix or garden soil. It's just got to be free draining. So you've got to keep that in the back of your mind whenever you're prepping your soil.
Sure. So would you apply a soil wetter as well to make sure that it's free draining, or would you do it after the grass is laid?
You can apply granular wetting agents before. There's a lot of starter fertilizers that people sell with turf actually have a wetting agent in them. So that can be a really good idea to use a starter fertilizer when you're laying turf. But wetting agents can generally be applied after the lawn's installed if you're having any issues. But what I would recommend people to do is when they're buying their turf is just ask the question about a starter fertilizer because a lot of them do have that wetting agent in it, and it's a good way to give your lawn a nice kickstart.
Okay, and so you've prepared the soil. Getting your levels right is really important. Everybody wants that lovely, flat, perfectly flat lawn. Is that what you're trying to achieve, or do you need some sort of a fall on it?
No, you need some sort of a fall on it, and there's a bit of a misconception. People want that beautiful bowling green lawn look. Just keep in the back of your mind, don't spend hours and hours getting it absolutely millimetre laser perfect. Reason being is turf's a natural product. It's a part of agriculture. Not every apple, not every potato is the same. Not every roll of turf is exactly totally uniform. It's not like timber boards. They're not made in a factory. So if you spend all the time getting your prep billiard table, beautiful, perfect, you can be a little bit disappointed when the turf can be different, a mil or two out in thickness. So what we say is get it smooth, get it flat, but don't spend too much time getting it inch perfect. You're best to fix the levels if you want that look after the turf's established in. But the main thing I'll say when it comes to levels and getting that sorted is just to keep drainage and water flow in mind. The last thing you want is a pool in your yard because turf hates nothing like wet feet. Doesn't like wet feet. So if you're pooling to the center of your yard and your lawn's staying wet, that's when you run into troubles. So just think about water flow and getting that water away when you're prepping your soil.
Okay, and when you're prepping the levels, it's good to use a soil spreader to get it level, but don't bother getting on your hands and knees with a spirit level. It's not going to make the difference.
No. You can to get it reasonably smooth, but just don't spend it. Be out there hours with a laser level and a screed and getting it millimetre perfect.
Yep.
Because the fact of agriculture is not every bit's the same.
Yes.
So whilst it is very, very consistent, there can be millimetre undulations here and there. So you just don't want people spending too much time. It's easy to fix afterwards.
So when you come to actually laying the turf down, what's the process of that? For me, I like to do a border around the outside and then stagger the joins on the inside because then you lessen the stripes when it inevitably dries out.
Sounds like you've done this a couple of times before.
I've laid a bit of turf in my time, yeah. Is that the way to do it? Am I doing it right?
No, you're spot on. Spot on. So it is important whether you're laying slabs or rolls, depending what type of harvester the farm uses, is to lay a border around the outside. And the reason for that is A, it looks great, but B, is when you're laying on the outside, you're generally laying up against hard surfaces like pavers, paths, fences, that sort of thing. And because they're harder surfaces, generally they heat up more, so they attract more heat. So if you use cuttings or little bits of turf up against these hard surfaces, they tend to dry out that little bit quicker. So it's better to use full slabs or full rolls around the outside. And the other point you made there about staggering your joints is super important. So just like you would, people do herringbone patterns like they do with brick, or if you just do standard staggered brickwork pattern, that's great. The reason why that's good is especially if you're laying on slopes to prevent forms of erosion, it just knits that turf in a lot better. But the other reason is it just looks a lot better. You don't want the same consistent lines running, parallel when you're laying your turf. You want it all knitted in together. It'll establish a lot better and it'll look better and it'll prevent erosion.
Would you top dress as soon as you've laid to fill in any gaps between the rolls to stop it drying out?
Look, you can. There's no harm in doing it. The only situation I would tell people to do it is if you're in a cooler climate like Victoria, SA, and you're laying turf on a shoulder season, so late April, early spring, something like that, it can help to speed up establishment somewhat before winter sets in. But generally, if you butt the edges of your rolls and slabs up nice and close together, generally there won't be a need to top dress at all. But if you're going to do it, just use a sand or a really sandy soil to do it. But generally, if you do the job properly, like you do in all your jobs, I'm saying you would need to do it.
Sounds good. There's an old saying in gardening that you pick the right plant for the right spot, and it's going to succeed. Is that the same with turf? Is it the different varieties are for different requirements?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure this is similar to plants. I'm not a big expert in plants, but there are certain varieties that handle shade better, that handle wear and tear better, that use less water, that should be used in certain situations. So a lot of the time turf fails is it's simply the wrong varieties put in the wrong spot. So like anything, we've got shade tolerant varieties, we've got wear tolerant varieties, and we've got varieties that use less water. So if you don't have good access to irrigation, or you're in a rural area, there's certain varieties that suit certain applications a lot better.
What is the best grass for shade? Because that's the one question I get asked the most. You're under a tree, it's quite a shady spot. Can you use grass, or is it better to maybe go for a ground cover or something like that?
No, you can use grass. Grass has its limits, but it's a really common question now with the modern day housing estate, I guess you'd call them, small blocks, big houses, lots of shade. So there are shade tolerant varieties. The most shade tolerant you'll get is a soft leaf buffalo, like Sir Walter, DNA certified, is Australia's most popular variety. And the reason it is so popular is because of its shade tolerance. So you can get away with Sir Walter in as little as sort of 2 to 3 hours of sunlight a day. You'll need a little bit more than that if you're getting regular wear and tear on it. But as a rule of thumb, if you put Sir Walter DNA certified buffalo in 2 to 3 hours of sunlight or low light areas, it'll generally succeed and do pretty well.
Yeah. So we've discussed about our disgust of fake grass, and I guess that's a very modern thing. One thing that I do like about modern gardening is robotic lawnmowers, and I know you're a huge fan of these. Now, I've got the STIHL on my property, and I love everything about it. I think it's great, and I know you love them as well. What is it? I mean, for me, it takes the chore of gardening out, and my grass looks healthier. What is it that you love about them?
Yeah, well, I've got to say, when they first sort of surfaced a few years ago, being a diehard lawnie, I was a little bit skeptical on them. I've got one at my place now, and products like the STIHL and robotic mowers in general, I really think they're the future, and I'm a big fan of them for a couple of reasons. Personal or a selfish reason, whatever you want to call it, it's less work at the end of the day. And look, I do like mowing my lawn, I always did, but I like doing other stuff like hanging with my mates, family, that sort of thing, doing nothing sometimes too. So the amount of time you actually save with a robotic mower is really, really good, and it's generally important time too. So you're at work, most people are at work for X amount of hours a week. You only get a small amount of time to spend at home with your friends, with your family, doing the things you love, doing the things you want. So if you take a chunk of that out with mowing, robotic mowers can get rid of that. So from a personal point of view, it's great. But from the health of your lawn, and this is often quite overlooked, robotic mowers like the STIHL, what they do is, because they're not catching clippings, they're actually mulching small lawn clippings back into the garden, back into the grass every time they mow. Lawn clippings are a really, really good source of nitrogen. So technically, you're kind of fertilising your lawn, minutely fertilising your lawn every time you mow. And if you multiply that by every single day, you're putting a lot of nutrients back into your lawn. So it is really, really good for the health of your grass.
So it's like the circle of life. We could hold Simba up to the sun and start singing the Lion King every time the mower goes out.
Yeah, if you're that way inclined, Charlie, you can do that. No worries at all. But no, look, they're super quiet. They're good for the environment. And I mentioned before, mowing regularly is good. You can't get much better than something that goes out every night and cuts your grass for you. It's they're a really, really good thing, and I think they're the future of lawns in Australia.
So do you run yours at night or during the day? Because I run mine during the day so I can watch it, because I like to watch it mow the grass.
That's the problem. Wives get cranky with their husbands, or husbands get cranky with their wives for mowing the lawn too much, and all they do is sit there and watch it for the same amount of time that they used to be mowing. So I tend to run mine at night, more so than I do in the day. It doesn't really matter. I just got the schedule on it at night. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I just sure. I suppose my front yard is quite accessible, so it is nice to know that you're a little bit safer when the thing's buzzing around at night. With
garden tools as such, brush cutters and hedge trimmers and stuff, battery is really pushing forward. And like the robotic lawnmowers, they're sort of battery powered, if you will. But so are push mowers now, and the performance on those is getting it's pretty close to petrol, if not better. Some of the mowers, you notice when you take them over slightly longer grass, they speed up to cope with the stress on the motor. Are you seeing when people are asking you about lawn care, people are moving towards battery mowers?
Yeah, you're seeing a lot now, and rightly so. Look, the petrol mowers are great, and they will be great for a long, long time, but battery mowers have so many wonderful benefits now, and the power you're getting out of battery mowers now is really, really good. Like, you can almost scarify a lawn with a battery mower. They're so powerful, and it's great. And because I'm not the most mechanically minded person, having not to mix fuel and oil and having fuel handy in the shed and making a mess and spilling it everywhere is so good. And I know, with the STIHL range, you can have the one battery for the mower, the whippersnipper, the blower, the hedger, all that sort of stuff. And it is so much neater. It's quieter. You can get out at 6:30 instead of 7 in the morning to annoy the crap out of your neighbours.
I couldn't.
But just from an ease of use point of view, you're never changing spark plugs. You're never doing any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And now we're getting the performance out of battery products. So I think they're a definite thing to consider if you're looking to buy some new equipment for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The STIHL battery mower actually just got awarded Choice's Best Battery Mower, which is good. That's amazing.
That's great, yeah. And like I said, they really are getting better. So from a person who likes to really cut into their grass and they think only a petrol mower can do that, the proof's in the pudding there with the award STIHL's got. The power they're getting now is really, really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it you think, why do people like looking out at a really nice flat lawn?
People are really starting to appreciate how important a good lawn is, or a good backyard is, or a good open space is. And what an open space does for you at home is like you said, it allows you to create memories. You talk to people what they did when they were growing up, and the first thing they normally say is they played backyard footy, they played backyard cricket, they built bike jumps, they did this, they did that. We don't realise how much we actually use our lawns. So they're so important to have, and they're so important to keep in good condition. And I think that's become evident with lockdowns now is having a good, healthy garden is so good for so many reasons, not just the look and the feel of it, but the mental and physical health benefits you get out of having a nice green open space. And I know you'd feel the same here. Even taking your shoes off and just walking out on the grass, you instantly feel better.
Yeah.
It cools the house down. It absorbs dust. It does so many wonderful things that are often quite overlooked.
Yeah, it does. And I think you've told me in the past an interesting fact about the amount of oxygen a regular lawn produces compared to a tree.
Yeah, so we had these figures in and around our marketing over the years is an average size lawn will absorb more carbon and emit more oxygen than the world's largest tree. So the more lawns we get out there, the more carbon we're absorbing, the more oxygen we're emitting, and we're creating this this wonderful natural air conditioner. I guess it's creating beautiful clean air, and it's also cooling everything down as well.
Yeah. What would be the number one problem you see with lawns? What do people come to you saying, I've got this problem? Is it a fungal problem? Is it a drainage problem? What is it?
Generally, the most common problems we get are generally the easiest ones to fix. I think compacted or poor quality soil would probably be the number one. That's because so many problems actually stem from that. Even you mentioned fungus there, you mentioned weeds, you mentioned bare patches in your lawn. They're actually all related to poor soil quality. So I think compacted soils are probably the reason for the majority of lawn problems. So one thing I like to tell people is that if they're not happy with the quality of their lawn or how their lawn's looking, it's got too many weeds, it's got a fungus, yada, 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 aerate, fertilise, top dress will get rid of 90% of lawn problems straight away because you're correcting that soil base. A healthy soil base is a healthy lawn. So I just think it's often quite overlooked. So if you're not quite happy with something, generally an aerate, a fertilise and a top dress will make the problem go away.
But like you said, preparation is the key to success when it comes to a lawn.
100%. Grass is just a pretty little thing on top. It is pretty, but it's just all the benefit out of a good lawn comes with that preparation. So it is so important to get right.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for your advice today. There's going to be many gardeners out there this weekend giving their lawn a little bit of love. So thank you for your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Now it is time for some community questions, and I do love answering these. So Brent from Lithgow, New South Wales asks, "Hi Charlie, my lawn is uneven and has a couple of low patches. Can I just add some new soil to the area to level the lawn, or do you have any special tips for leveling a lawn?" Now, this all depends on how deep the divot is in your lawn. If it's a small divot, you can just put some sand on top and the grass will grow through. If it's a larger divot, like a pretty noticeable one that you might trip over as you walk up, you might want to cut a section of the grass out and then add some soil to bring the level up and then put the grass back. And the reason you do that is if you put sand on top of that grass, it's just going to decompose its organic matter and then you're going to have a drop in level again. So if you can get rid of the grass, fill it up with a sand and then put a grass on top, you're going to get a much better effect. And as Joe says, you need to fertilize and water that in well to establish it. Nikki from Victoria says, I have a large tree in the front garden that has big shade around it, causing no grass. There is amazing grass in the rest of the garden. Is there anything I can do to start growing grass in an area that is in shade? Now, shade is a big killer for grass. You could try a shade-tolerant variety, such as Sir Walter Buffalo, but in my opinion, if it's not going to get more than 3 or 4 hours of sunlight, it's never going to be doing very well. So my preference is to go for something that's going to thrive in that area. You could use a lawn substitute. Something like a dichondra is going to give you a really low green ground cover. You could maybe try something like a juga. It might give you a little bit more height. You get a purple flower with it, and it's going to cover the ground. That's going to remove any dust issues. It's going to look really nice, and it's just going to lift your whole garden. You're not going to have half-eaten, half-decent looking lawn, I should say. You're going to have a great looking ground cover. Do you have a gardening question you'd like us to answer? Send us an email at charlie@stihl.com.au. I look forward to getting your questions. Thanks for listening to That's How We Grow, in partnership with STIHL Garden Power Tools. So what have we learnt? Well, I learnt that preparation is the key to a perfect lawn. And when you're mowing, you need to be mowing more often and take less off. Or if you don't have the time, just make a shift towards a robotic mower like an iMower and it can do it all for you. We also learnt how to repair your lawn no matter the size of the problem. A little bit of aeration, sandy top dress, and fertilise 3 times a year. In our next episode, I will be joined by Australia's favourite home cook, Maggie Beer. She's not only an amazing cook, but has some of the best knowledge around when it comes to growing veggies. She cooks with all the produce grown on her property in the Barossa Valley, so we'll talk about all things veggie patches and maybe even find out Maggie's secret ice cream recipe. Do you need the tools to take on any garden challenge, or perhaps you want to learn more about STIHL's battery lawnmowers or their iMow robotic mower? Go to stihl.com.au or head to your local STIHL dealer today. Follow STIHL on Instagram at stihl_au and follow me on Instagram as well at charlie_albone. And don't forget to check out STIHL's blog with plenty of great gardening advice, tips and tricks. Thanks for listening. Until next Thursday.